Thank you very much for waiting for a long time. Now, today is the last day for the wonderful show, Togetherness and Oneness. And I really appreciated every artist who participated in this show. And I'd like to thank Nancy. Nancy is right here, it's hard, called Ennigsburg. She is the founder of the New York study of textile group of New York. And then when I was looking for textile fiber artists, I was having hard time to find any. As a result, she is the one who takes 300 membership. So everybody throughout USA belongs to her organization. She's a remarkable woman. She started out doing her work. Her work is right here, very modest one. So she still continues to be very strong. I asked her to be a curator of the textile and fiber show, but unfortunately she had illness, and then she fell down on top of it, and she recovered well enough. Now she was able to climb up today. Thank you very much, Nancy. Thanks to your cooperation. And also, another person who collaborated with me is Nicholas Newton, whose pieces are here, ceramic, and then ceramic pieces there. He wanted to attend artist talk, but he has twin babies just born, and then 3-year-old boys. And besides, he has to run business. Besides, he's renovating his studio, all sorts of reasons. He could not come to join us. He said hello to you all. He was the one who collaborated with me, or who recommended the list of excellent ceramists. So I was able to choose. Those are the pieces, ceramics. You see, ceramic artists are here, and thank you for bringing wonderful pieces. So I also want to thank participants as well as volunteers. Okay, I said enough in my email, whether you read it or not. So here I am. We are going to start. So Robin Roy, she is one of the ceramic artists right there on the wall with all sorts of tools. She could tell me interesting story how she was influenced to, and she is also a fine artist, two-dimensional artist. Her pieces in a small gallery too. Okay, all right, Robin Roy.
Yes, hi everybody. I have a really loud voice ordinarily, so tell me if I'm too loud. You know, I was going to read Yuko's questions that she posed to all of us, just to remind us, just as a prelude. So I'm just going to read what she suggested that we address. Number 1, how does art help unite people? 2, how does art help enlighten people? 3, is your art intended to make a statement? And 4, how can art improve the world and unite people? Which we need a lot of that right now, right? So I don't know that I directly addressed those questions, but it got me thinking a lot, and so that was a good thing. And I thought about, was thinking, well, why do I make my art? And you know, what is it? What really is it that I make this art for? So I tried to answer that. Making art is my form of meditation, the thing that calms my monkey mind. I don't know if you've ever heard that term, but it's sort of common. You know, the constant ongoing conversation in your head that says, what's the point? This is too personal. No one will want this. You're too old. You missed your moment. It's too decorative. It's not important enough. The constant judging, evaluating, critiquing. Making art is my spiritual connection and guide. Making art gives me purpose and a structure to my life, a reason to get up in the morning with that excitement of knowing where my day is going. Making art provides with a community of fellow artists and art appreciators. Other than my family, this community is invaluable to my sense of well-being. They anchor me, they give me a place to stand. Making art keeps my mind and spirit healthy, which is the only way I'm able to be a contribution to this community that I love. Making art grows me in a non-linear way, as I never know where it will lead me. It is serendipitous, and I surrender to its meanderings. It keeps me out of the trap of knowing, and allows me to be in the present moment, that time when creation can actually occur. So that's the why, and then there's the what. What is it that I actually make? And I did write a little bit of a history, but that I don't have to read. that I know very well. So I know that pattern and design has been with me since since I was a baby. So I was born in Far Rockaway, Belle Harbor, and my grandparents owned a very large house, and they rented out rooms for summer people. And there were 15 small apartments. And every room in every apartment had a different wallpaper pattern. And my earliest paintings actually reference some of the imagery that I recall from those wallpapers. And my earliest toys my whole family were tailors. So we had Singer sewing machines in every room. There were tin boxes of buttons. And I sort of compulsively made piles of, all the red ones, all the blue ones, all the star-shaped ones, all the square ones. Just that pattern-making thing in me that wanted to come out absolutely came out. So that has just stayed with me my whole life, and I do a lot of patterns, a lot of repetitive imagery, and in my paintings as well as on the ceramic sculptures. And for a very long time, for over 30 years, I worked for Evergreen Architectural Arts, which is a mural painting company and restoration company in New York. And I was head of the decorative painting department. So I did that for a very long time. And so that's my history, and results in lots of patterns. That's it. Thank you. Any questions?
Okay. Robbie mentioned that your grandparents had a big house in Belle Harbor. Which year? 1950s or 60s?
I was born in 49. 1949.
Uh-huh. So when you start realizing wallpapers in each room, how old were you?
Oh, well, I was a baby and growing up, and we moved actually to North Carolina, which is actually where I grew up, but we came back to my grandparents' home to all those wallpapers like every holiday, every summer. We were just back and forth all the time. Mm-hmm. So, literally, I can tell you what's in every room. I can remember. There was emerald green flocked wallpaper in the living room.
Yeah. I can see that wallpapers. So I can relate to the image in the small gallery on two-dimensional, piece. And in a way, it's a beautiful pattern. I was wondering.
Yes.
So as you can see, the young age wherever you grew up is really imprinting you as a great influence.
I think it is. That's a great word, imprint. I absolutely think it's imprinted. It stays with you.
Without intending to.
Yeah.
Indeed. I'm sure you can share the same story with her. I think it's interesting. Okay, thank you very much. Next one is Janine So. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So she is a ceramic artist. Her piece is right next to Robin Ray, right here. And then Robin has a green piece on the pedestal. And then Janine has 3 pieces, one on the wall and 2 pieces on the pedestal. Interestingly enough, she has a wave board. Wave board is sitting on the pedestal. One can move around to take a look at different patterns. So there are 3, 4 images. Okay, she is also running a wonderful ceramic store in Greenpoint. So I am going to check to see someday soon. So I want you to be aware of it. Okay, welcome.
Thank you so much. So congratulations to all the artists who are here. This show is so inspiring, especially, all of us coming out of isolation and a year and a half of pandemic life. It's good to know that people are creating in their kitchens or in their basement if they have to. And so my story is somewhat similar to Robin's in the sense that I didn't start in ceramics. Ceramics was something that I came into in my 30s, which was a long time ago. I was a clothing and textile designer, and so it was really obvious that clay, the impressions that I do in clay represent a lot of what I see in patterning, in texture, and in color. I studied menswear design. I worked in New York City in my 20s. I was super successful. I traveled all over the world, but I was feeling very empty as a result of living that lifestyle. And one trip to Sicily kind of changed my whole life. And I realized that there was a deeper part of me that hadn't really been tapped as an artist. And I remembered being a student at Syracuse University and daydreaming about getting on the bus and going to the ceramics department rather than the fashion department. And that kind of woke up the clay person in me. So fast forward many years later, I was doing ceramics up in Syracuse. I started a business. I moved back to Brooklyn, New York, and lived the life of a single, handmade, doing shows kind of artist, and I loved it. But I came into the business when the market was starting to tank, but I didn't know it. I didn't know anything about the economy. And around 2006, when I realized, wow, this can't be a livelihood for me. And I was working very much alone in my studio, and I'm a people person, so it was very isolating. And I remember those feelings of isolation as I went through the pandemic and thinking, well, I'm creative, but this is very lonely, and I do much better with people. So I opened my studio in 2006 and started to develop a community. I figured I have a lot of space, I have all the equipment, let me see what I can do. So I brought people in and created a membership studio in Greenpoint, and it was going very well until I had to leave that space in 2020. So imagine it's January of 2020, there's no knowledge that we're gonna shut down and go into pandemic mode. I took a new space in Greenpoint and started building it and had to shut down in March. I think around that time I got Yuko's invitation and I thought, this is great. I'm gonna be able to create some work for this show. And it was my way of saying I still exist as an artist. Maybe I build a community for other artists, but I'm still here. And I was really delighted to participate in the show. The reason I make art is for my sanity. That monkey mind that Robin speaks about, I think lives in all of us, one way or another. It keeps us sane, it keeps us connected, it keeps me whole, it makes me whole. If I go too many days without touching clay, I feel a little out of sorts. When I reopened the studio in May, people came flocking. They came flocking, and I created an intake form, and I asked questions. Why do you want to be a part of this studio? And the answers, sometimes it made me even want to cry, because people were really speaking from the heart. They were talking about their experience of being alone, of needing community, of wanting connection, of finding clay during the pandemic and wanting to continue. So that sent the message to me that my role as an artist is not only to create the work that makes me whole, but to create the conditions in which other people can come and enjoy clay. Clay is one of the most forgiving mediums that is there. It is something that children as young as 3 enjoy, and adults as old as 100 can enjoy, and everything in between. So I feel like, I was meditating on Yuko's questions, and to me, working in the arts is a solo practice. We go into our cave, we make our work, but really, we're healers of the planet. We're the people, in my opinion, that can reach across boundaries. We reach across languages. We reach across images. We reach across political ideologies. If you're touched by a piece of art, it touches you in a place that we all share, and that's a very inner experience. So whether you're a maker or a viewer, there's something so holistic about art as an experience that I think we as artists are going to be very important as we come through this time. So I just want to thank you for listening to my story, and I'm so delighted to be a part of this group. Thank you.
So Janine said perfectly what War Center's mission is all about. War Center brings all artists from the entire world. This is a very international community. And then they share visual language. You don't have to speak Spanish, French, Japanese, Chinese, but immediately you can respond to what you see. And then artworks permanently stayed, and we are going to we have acquired permanent collections. For that reason, permanency means when you look at a piece of art later on, and it becomes to be another dimensions, not only the time that you're involved, but when you look back and then you think about the past history, still relate today. So War Center's mission, as I said, through international language of art, you come to understand each other, you come to respect each other, and you come to love each other. So it is a peace, harmony, unity. In Japanese, war means peace, harmony, unity. So you said the right things. I'm so glad to hear your statement. Thank you very much. Okay, next one is Nancy Koenigsberg.
Well, hello everyone. I'm very glad to be here. And I think listening to you and to Yoko, everyone is really saying the same thing. As artists, we all go into our studios better, and making art can be a very solitary thing. But artists are very sociable, and they do want to share their work. Yoko asked, how does art help to unite people? Well, I think artists naturally unite. They are inspired by other people's work, and they want to show theirs. They want to talk about it, and it does unite. It does unite, and I think instead of answering the question separately, I think I'm going to put them together. But when I had a career change, I had a design business for many years, and then I too found it no longer fulfilling, and I took a course at the New School. If you live in New York, you will know about the New School. The New School started during the Second World War mainly for refugee professors from Europe to have a place to gather and to teach. And it grew like crazy. And now it's the New School University, and it has joined with Parsons. So I thought, I got a catalog. I think if you walked on 12th Street in those years, they sent you a catalog. And I signed up for a textile course. I was designing some furniture coverings in needlepoint, so it was close to home. But I wanted to make what I was not just design for other people, but I wanted to have the whole deal, and I wanted to learn to weave. I did learn to weave, and I must have just been very dense, because I took this beginning course in off-loom textile techniques. So it was frame loom and coiling and all kinds of different techniques. And one day as I was working on this little piece, I realized weaving is darning. I knew how to darn. I learned in school how to darn. And I thought, how stupid am I that I never made this connection before? And I mean, that was the beginning. And I stayed at the New School for 3 years with a very interesting instructor, met some very wonderful women, and when it was over, because the instructor was leaving, her name was Gail Wimmer, we decided we wanted to get together. So we did, 5 of us, and we met once a month, and it was a success. People said, oh, what are you doing? You know, I'd say, oh, sorry, busy on Wednesday night. Oh, well, then it was Thursday. And it grew. It was just like dropping a stone in water. We figured we needed a name, so we called ourselves the Textile Study Group of New York. And those 5 people who started in '77 are now over 250. And we still meet once a month, except for July and August. And we have a speaker. And it has led to just wonderful things. Our speaker, at the end of the speaker, we have a question and answer period. Well, for the speaker, really, for people to ask the speaker. Well, people got so interested in the question, in the Q&A, and they formed their own little groups to discuss other things. So we have one that meets, we have a general one run by the Textile Study Group that meets once a month. And almost every week I hear from someone, do you want to join our group? Or, oh, we started another group. And people have just gotten together and formed, they have topics. Sometimes the topic is something that they want to explore. Sometimes it's something left over from the meeting. So it has become a mainstay for a lot of people's lives, and it's wonderful. The other question that you had, I think I'm just sort of jumping around. Yeah, I do think art makes a statement. And I think people, your statement is whatever you want it to be. Sometimes no one knows what you're saying, and it takes repeated viewing of what you've done, or you look at it and feel you have to explain it a little bit more. But it's definitely communicating. We are all, most artists are communicators. You hear about these people who want to go in their studios and work, and they don't want anybody there. My husband and I went on an art tour with the Whitney maybe 40 years ago, and we went to one studio and where we'd been invited, a very famous artist, and he saw the bus come up the driveway, stop, maybe almost the length of a football field away. He had a long driveway, and he had a big window. When he was looking out, this is the only time I've ever had this experience where people didn't welcome us. I had not organized it. And he just put up his hands and he said, "You effing tourists, get away from here." Outside of that, I mean, we are communicators, and I think we can't wait to tell people about our art. And the third thing was whatever. I recently went to the well, it used to be called the Breuer, now it is the Frick, and they have a selection from the Frick in a way that if you've been to the Frick, and if you're an artist and you live in New York, I'm sure you've been to the Frick. This is a whole new way of looking at things, and a whole new way I found of communicating. People that never saw each other before were deeply engaged in conversations about the way the work looked there, how different it was, what a different view they had. And I think a lot of museums are rehanging and trying to give people another look. And I hope you will look at that and go and look at everything else. And I'm sure most of you have found the inspiration that I have found just living in New York. And I thank you all. It's not what I was really going to say.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nancy. She has lived long life, so she has long story to tell. We all enjoy the thing that we never knew. So that's why it's so wonderful to have artists talk. Thank you very much. And the next one is, Hilary Steele. She is a textile artist. She is sitting in front of a big kimono-shaped piece. And it's a very interesting story to hear. Okay, Hilary.
Thank you, Yuko, and fellow artists and friends. So I will say a few words. I tried to process this as best I can, and might be a little all over the place, but I tend to take a little bit of an anthropological view of art making and humans, as human activity, so I'm going to start there, but I really echo everything that's been said so far, and I'm sure it will continue. So art is transformative, and regardless of one's chosen media, performative, visual, written, the art of making something, and for me it's manipulating materials and embellishing surface, but the art of making something and going beyond the practical and the utilitarian, also called making special, is a pleasurable and gratifying act. And as a weaver and a dyer, I can attest to that. The term making special comes from Ellen Dissignaci's book, Homo Aestheticus, which was written, I think, in 1992. And it refers to the act of creating as an intrinsic human behavior that dates back 300,000 years. So making special is rooted in our global social and ceremonial practices around understanding and dealing with life, birth, death, healing, the spiritual realm, and ultimately our survival as a species. In my 30 plus years of teaching, I've seen satisfaction and delight when among students, young and old, when their thinking shifts from I can't to an openness to try something to yes, I can. People are surprised by their abilities, and many of us were told, or we decided ourselves that we just didn't possess these abilities. So art is a catalyst. Art making, art experiences opens doors to places, cultures, and life's experiences. Art is healing, art's empowering. Art around us, whether we're making it or engaging with it, offers opportunities to learn more deeply and to share our own stories, to listen to those stories and absorb stories of others who might be similar or very different from us. And the stories run the gamut from joyful to sorrowful. I think that public art and community art projects especially are a good vehicle for bringing communities together and to create spaces for enduring and meaningful dialogue and growth. Art is an equalizer. It can lift spirits and transcend our differences regardless of age, gender, race, religion, and language. Art brings us together and emphasizes what's common among us. The arts are necessary human behaviors and pursuits which deserve support and cultivation in our schools, in our communities, and in our daily lives. And a little bit about me, it's funny, I focused on my work since 2007 in Mexico. I've been going up until COVID yearly and sometimes twice a year to work with weavers in Mexico. But prior to that, back in the very early 90s, I guess, I traveled to the Ivory Coast to study with weavers there. So I tend to look toward traditional work and study with master artisans when I can, and that's really informed the work that I do. Since 2007, I've worked with weavers in the community of Tenancingo, which is in Mexico, in the state of Mexico, building a deeper understanding of a complicated resist technique called ikat, which I've been familiar with for many years and utilizing, but it's a little bit different in Mexico. And also weaving the cloth on a tool that's unfamiliar to me. So I'm very familiar with looms, but I was not familiar with a backstrap loom, which is what the Mayans used. So that was quite challenging, and it was like being a new artist again, taking on a new tool, and it was pretty life-changing. So it was a very rewarding challenge for me technically and personally, which reinforced my understanding of myself as a practitioner of a craft that comes from a mighty long history, like ceramics. And I guess going backward, I grew up in Queens. I've not lived in New York City for many, many decades, but I still have family here. But I have very strong memories of yarn and colors in rug factories and in the dye rooms, as well as a wonderful coloring book that I had, which I think was called People of the World. And it was just people in their environments and in their traditional dress. And I just used to copy those drawings all the time on tracing paper, because I never wanted to mess up my coloring book. And then I would, I guess, color them in. And I spent a lot of time I guess I've just always been interested in other cultures. And, you asked about whether artists begin with a clear intent or statement. So I guess I understood that a little bit differently from Nancy, because art certainly does make some sort of statement, and we don't necessarily understand it all the same way, nor do we need to. When I was younger, I think I was more sure-footed in that I made designs, I made drawings, and I made my work, but I was learning how to do the work at that point, so I think it was more, I was coming from a more technical place. But then it changed as I matured. And when I begin to work now, I really don't start with a very clear idea or intent of what I want to convey. So the work that I do is very labor-intensive, very slow, and the idea comes to me as the work takes form. Typically, and on a piece like this, which I worked on and off for about 5 years, I just make a lot of cloth. So I'm working on a big piece now, but at a given time, and it ebbs and flows, I might have 50 to 70 yards of cloth just sort of stored up in different colorways and different, with different designs woven into them. So, and then I just wait, and then I start various tasks. So I do a lot of dyeing, so sometimes I dye the threads first, I sometimes do and sometimes not use e-cut processes where I'm changing the color of the thread. And then when it's on the loom, as I weave it, it takes form of cloth. So I go through various tasks, dyeing threads, weaving, sometimes I'll over dye the cloth with other types of resist methods. Then I start cutting the cloth and I reconstruct it into its final form. So I'll take a lot of cloth from these different sizes and different colorways and different, woven structures. And I just start pinning it onto my wall. So this process it helps me give voice to whatever my thoughts are, my internal dialogue, ponderings, challenges. Sometimes I'm thinking about personal experiences that we all share, love, loss, parenting, friendship. At other times I'm addressing other stresses, national, global stresses and situations that are of great concern in the last number of years. So I do have a series of pieces that are addressing affordable housing, homelessness, migration, immigration, prison system, freedom of expression. I work with newspapers sometimes, and a lot of those pieces are constructed out of that newspaper that I weave. So this work behind me is titled Embrace, and it's really a thank you or an homage, an offering to my teachers and to others who've given me really what amounts to the best gift ever, which was their time, knowledge, and encouragement. And I include in that anonymous teachers, because initially I went to museums, I looked at a lot of books, and I gleaned information, and I just tried things in my studio. So I'm constantly learning as I work. And one of the most important things that I continue to learn is patience. My work requires a lot of focus and quiet. So for me and I guess once I get past weaving all the cloth and I've accumulated material, it's sort of a dance between my hands, the material, and my senses until I find my way to the end result. And it's step by step, it's guided by the dialogue between me and the material. So I've learned to listen and to wait, and this was really enhanced, I think, by the work I've done in Mexico. My teacher, and I worked with a dear friend of mine, Virginia Davis, for many, many years. So I will say our teacher, Dona Barista, just passed away in December of 2020. So that was, and not from COVID, but he really left his mark on me and I will continue, and I will continue to teach others, because I realize this is really, I've reached a certain age and I need to, I teach general art, but I need to move specifically into textiles and weaving and dyeing, so that'll be the next step. So maybe some of you can help me turn the corner and get cooking on that. So, thanks.
wonderful that Hilary created this kimono type of shapes. Took her 5 years to create. And was it a very strong influence from Japanese kimono?
It's most people see it as a kimono, and I of course can see it that way, but that's not what was in my mind. Probably, if anything, it was the rebozo, which is the textile that I make in Mexico, which is a very important shawl that is really embedded in the culture, in the folklore, in the literature. Women carry their children in them, they carry market items. It's used in courtship and marriage, and it's used to wrap the dead sometimes as well. So, but it really was about, you know, in the bigger scheme, it's really the importance of cloth and textiles in ritual and in culture, which is a topic I've studied for quite a long time, since my very early days. But again, I've really been blessed with incredible teachers, one of whom was a fellow Ralph Proctor in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, who taught me. I took a course with him on African art, which is a very old love of mine. And he gave me one of my first textiles from there and really encouraged me. So the list, you know, the more I think about it, there's just a ton of people who must have seen an interest in me, I suppose, but really, you know, sort of passed me along. So, yeah, so it's really a tribute to artisans.
Very interesting. Thank you very much, Hirori. Okay, next one is Yupin from Thailand, and she is the one who created On the Floor pine needles and pine cones. What a beautiful piece that is. So she can tell us, she belonged to a Mother Nature section, not textile, not ceramics, not glass, but Mother Nature section, 2D, 3D, and video. So, okay, Yupin, thank you.
My name is Yupin Pramopipop. I came from Thailand. I have an installation in this exhibition under the theme Mother Nature, curated by Yugoni, the founder of Yugoni Foundation. Thank you, Yugo, for having my piece here, and I'm grateful and humble to receive the Achievement Award, jury by Paulina Hobochar, curator from MoMA. And thank you everyone for being here today. During the pandemic, I was fortunate to be around the nature outside of the city more often than usual, surrounded with the beauty and the changing of seasons. Soon I found myself working with natural materials. Andy Goldsworthy is one of my favorite environmental artists. His work very much inspired me to do something with nature. My piece, titled Together as One, was created with pine cones and pine needles. Both are supporting and belonging to each other. Individual pine cones combined and got around in a circle. It represents us who come from different parts of the world, time, races, genders, classes, equally come together in a peaceful place. Nature has helped and healed me with my own personal emotional feeling. When my mom passed away past fall, it embraced and surrounded me, along with families and friends' love and support. I expressed my feeling and created some art in the size where I found the elements that I arranged into pattern drawings, land art. I was always related to art when I was a young girl, reading children's magazine, the small part in the art section. I remember admiring other young children whose artwork won the coloring competitions. The imaginations and the use of color still very inspiring to me. In my small hometown in the South, we experience art among the communities by going to the theater, seeing live music, dance, and watching the movies. Going to temple during the holiday festival, which always included regional Thai dance and music. The audience always seemed to connect with each other, enjoying these performances. We all live with art without knowing they're there. The beautiful architecture of the temples, churches, the different designs of traditional or contemporary clothing. We share our culture and exchange opinions across the globe through art. Art unites us. I came to New York to study art. I found a whole community, came from different countries. We spent time together creating art. The art had brought us together. New York is a big city filled with all kinds of art forms and scenes. People around the world came to visit art museums and galleries. Along with the sightseeing, enjoying the iconic skyline and architecture, a beautiful thing about New York is how much artwork there is from different cultures. Looking at art from different cultures can give us a glimpse into how we think, feel, dream, and the spiritual connections. The more we can understand others who are different, the more tolerant and more accepting we can become. Art unites us with our conversation, communicating, exchanges opinions and experiences across cultures. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You are from Thailand. I was in your country 1980s, so I know how community people get together special festivals and then watch movies and exchange their opinions. They are very tight communities and a Buddhistic country too, very peaceful. I'm not saying to prejudice against any other religions, but they do. And I saw the monks, young monks, early in the morning, going to temple after temples to beg for honorable gift. So I followed them all the temples. Even Chiang Mai, I went, even in the south. The beautiful experiences I had. And here we have only one foreign student, foreign artist, I'm sorry, except she is from Korea. She is a video artist. Art is a language itself, visual art. But you are able to talk to us very meaningful story behind you, families and so on, and we enjoy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next one is Mary Wessling. So Mary Wessling has been, my goodness, that when we opened up 1996, She joined us to help us volunteers. That was 1997. So can you imagine? She's been volunteer for 24 years. Thank you very much. I want you to stay around. Okay?
I'll try.
She tried the very best, and she can. Still keeping strong, creating her art. Her piece is not in this room. Her piece is in the small gallery. It is a cauliflower etching. She's a wonderful etcher. She's a painter as well. Okay, welcome, Mary.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to talk. I looked at the questions or the topics, and one of them, or two of them really interested me. The one had to do with making statements, saying something. And the other was, does art unite us? The first, making a statement, yes, because it's personal. For me, it's very personal, and I work in two different ways. One is observational, like the cauliflower, and I made it really huge so that you'd look at it, so that you'd really appreciate the beauty of that very simple thing, the beauty around us. And then the other way I work is personal, and it's in reaction to things that trouble me, things that outrage me. And like my mother's death, it helps me work through trauma or upset. 9/11, my daughter's friend's violent rape. Right now, I have a 34-year-old African son, and I send him out into the streets each day, and I read the papers. And so I'm doing a series of work of young black bodies running away, and the dozens that have been shot in the back, and worries me. And whether or not they pass muster artistically doesn't really matter. I don't care. I care. I'd like to hang at the Met, but no. And then the other thing I thought about is, does art unite us? And yeah, it unites us, those people in the exclusive group that we're in. But I think the general public, we're not united with them, really. It's very hard to reach them. Have you ever been like I apologized to? Oh, you're an artist. I've never drawn a straight line. How many times have you heard that? I'll bet you've all heard it. People apologizing to me for not being able to draw. And I wouldn't dream of saying to a brain surgeon, oh, I've never opened a skull. Oh my God, Who would think to say that? But people say that all the time, which indicates to me that they're very insecure, and we're not united with them. And I'm not sure how that can happen. Maybe communicating better, maybe things like this, but we're talking to ourselves. We're really talking to ourselves. And how to talk to people, how to make them less afraid. Less afraid. There have been studies that say that children stop drawing when they're 12 because they realize that what they're drawing has nothing to do with what that looks like. And they've got teachers that say, why did you paint that barn blue? Barns are supposed to be red. So I think we've got a lot of work to do in terms of educating, in terms of making us less exalted. I think people think that we spring from our mother's wombs being able to draw, and they don't recognize the work and the self-doubt and the struggle, that we've all gone through, and the judgment, our self-judgment. and we put ourselves out to be judged, which is an act of bravery, really. It's an act of bravery to put your work out there and open yourself up for rejection. And the people that admire us so, or are in such awe of us, have this idea that we were born that way. They're not recognizing the amount of work that goes into it. And our job is some way to open it up, to make it less celestial, less refined, less, I don't know, special. It's not special. None of us is special. We're just doing basically a very navel-gazing, selfish endeavor. We're putting ourselves, we're trying to talk to people, and we're assuming that they're going to want to hear what we have to say. And hopefully they do. Hopefully they do. So I thank you, Hugo, for getting me thinking about those questions. And I thank you for giving me the opportunity to say what I have to say. If you're interested at all, I brought the plate of the etching that I have in the back, because I think some people might be interested to see the
Would you like to show it?
No, why don't I you go ahead with your program, and I'll just put it out.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mary. Very interesting, different point of view. Yes, indeed. Thank you, Mary. Very good. Okay, next one is on the left side, Renee Weidenberg. She is a curator who curated the glass art, and she usually exhibits special show, War Salon. We have a special art club show called War Salon annual show. Beautiful, beautiful pieces she usually submits, and then her piece was hanging there. With some reason, my assistant came today. She called me to say that piece was broken. So you can see no piece of Renee Weidenberg's glass. I'm so sorry that happened. We will talk about that. Okay, are you ready to listen to the guest artist? Please be quiet, because we have to listen to their story. Okay, so Renee.
Thank you, Hugo. Appreciate curating this and also putting a piece in. Unfortunately, it looked like the glue had detached from the glass and is now on the floor. But I will take the glass and refuse it and make another piece. That's the wonderful part about glass. So how does art help unite people? And it's also, how can art improve the world and unite people? To me, every single one of you and everyone in this world is creative. You don't have to draw a line, you don't have to paint, but you're all creative. We all think in our minds. Accountant is creative with numbers. A doctor is healing people. Artists are making wonderful, beautiful objects. So if we can recognize the fact that every single human on this earth is creative in their own way, I feel that can unite people. And in uniting people, this way we recognize what each one of us can create. Whether you're an artist or you do computers, you're a doctor, whatever you do, you're still creative. And so how does art help enlighten people? To me, art definitely helps people mentally and also it helps the physical environment. Without art, we would have a very bland environment. Without art, people would definitely be mentally ill. I personally had that experience. When Sandy Storm hit, my studio was totally destroyed, and for 9 months I couldn't create. And in those 9 months I got depressed and very overwhelmed because my community, I live in Rockaway, was devastated. And so I learned from that lesson. So when we became in-house, in shelter through the pandemic, I'm not going to go that way, and I started creating a lot. And I've been very productive the past year and a half. And so, and I can't remember the artist that was saying it, but so true. Whether you are looking at art or creating art, it really helps you mentally. There is actually a study through Columbia University that work with doctors and health workers that journal or they see visual art, and it helps them on the creative side of their brain versus their technical side of the brain when they're young doctors or, grow to be doctors. So it really does help us mentally. Is art intended to make a statement? I feel that all pieces of art make a statement, one way or the other, whether it's positive, negative, political, or non-political. My art tends to not be political. I want people to grow up to it. Unfortunately, you can't see it at the moment. And just have that moment of and wow. And so that to me is important to see my art. And for glass, to me, glass has been around thousands and thousands of years. The earliest we know is the Egyptians did glass. But glass has been a functional medium back in the day until the mid-20th century. It functioned in vessels, on the windows, for stained glass. It was you put things on it or in it. But in the mid-20th century, it became an art. So it's a very, very new medium. And so people tend to feel it's a craft, but it's really not a craft. It is an art. It is challenging because technically it's very, very challenging. To me, I love it because I learn every single day. All my happy mistakes and all my disasters as you see now, but that will turn around. And glass, there is so many different techniques. So when I say I'm a glass artist, people go, oh, you blow glass? No, I don't. I work in the kiln. So we have different techniques, and when I curate, I try to show those different techniques, and so that you learn about glass. And that's the reason why I curate. I love doing glass shows to show people what glass can be as art. And it's important to recognize glass as art. It really is not a craft. And just like I know my fellow ceramics have the same issue. People think that's a craft, and it's not. There's wonderful pieces that are artistic. It's an art. So the artists that I have in this show, as you can see, there's different techniques. There's neon, there's flame work, which is the piece that looks like a rake. Then there's fused glass. There's also glass that's been twisted. It was kiln formed and then twisted in the hot shop, which is where glass is blown. And that's the plate, the red plate over there. Then there's fused glass and mosaics and and blown glass, which is that orange vase that you see by the window. And there's layered glass, which is that big piece of a woman's face. So that's just a touch of what glass artists can do. And I hope you enjoy it. And again, I thank Yuko for allowing us to show here and educate all of you on how glass art can be. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. And as she pointed out, the glass used to belong to crafts field and more vessels, practical use. But now, 20th centuries, the concept of glass became fine art, the same as ceramics. So when I was thinking of involved in choosing artists, all product of nature, glass, ceramics, fabrics, as well as painting, two-dimensional, and drawings, and printmaking. They are all natural product, medium. That's what this show is all about. Togetherness means together with nature. What product of nature can be expressed by different media artists. So this is a fine art show, and my goodness, it's so wonderful. Division was expanded, same as ceramics art, textile art. It's no longer textile wearing. It is something fine art to appreciate. And so we have expanded a wider view, wider definition of what art means. Like photography used to be taking photo, but became different kind of medium expressed on the glass or different medium on metal as artworks. And so we have tremendous possibilities to express ourselves in fine art. And that's the beautiful thing about today's art, which didn't happen before. And when I was pursuing as a painter after I finished graduate school, and Pratt Institute professor said, you have to bring your resume and bring your slides to your gallery. So I did, but believe it or not, all artists at that time, 1960s and 70s, they used to be all made. They called it men's club. But here I was going around. Only 2 galleries I went to show my slides. Oh, I'm so sorry, you brought your father's artwork, and I will let you know if we like it. And never heard from them, so I called, and we haven't seen it yet. So won't you bring your father? Oh, I said, well, I was the one who painted it. Oh, I didn't know that. Why do you paint stones? And blah, blah, blah. And so we cannot accept your work because it's too philosophical. And you don't belong to abstract expressionists, figurative, field painting, and cutting edge. Those are the definite art movement at that time. So my painting never belonged to anywhere for a long, long time. I gave up to pursue looking for galleries. But that's okay, as long as I have meaning to find out who I was, who I am. That's the art is about too. Of course, lack of communication is a little bit sad. But as long as I was satisfied with what I have created, whether satisfied or not, but at that moment. So things are changing a lot, my goodness. Fine art, more women participated in today's art world during the time that I was pursuing. only women who are married to famous male painters or artists, they are able to mingle with the men's club. So things change, and we have curator from MoMA, Pauline Porcher said, without looking at who are those artists, and she said she gave 18 honorable show. Who are those artists? And then counted. There are so many women, and a previous lockdown show is the same. She said, this is just amazing. Amazing, so many women, very creative. You belong to museum. Those pieces belong to museum. So I jokingly said, this is the museum. Thank you very much. So that is it. We have a wonderful artist who come forward, and no hesitation to show to me. And sometimes I have to reluctantly decline. So anyhow, here we are. What you mentioned about medium changing into fine art is a very good point. Thank you very much. So everybody says very meaningful things through this discussion. Okay, thank you. Next one is James Acker. He is a glass artist, and then Renée Weidenberg was a curator who curated this. She chose one of neon work, very unusual. Thank you.
Hey. Thanks, Yuko and Renee, for curating this. I know it's a ton of work to curate a show, and you have to wrangle artists, which is like herding cats. I don't want to speak for everyone, but for myself, I know I'm like the worst at communicating. Like Renee's like, come on, just send me the freaking email. And I'm like, I have 50 million things to do, I'm so sorry. Anyways, so back to these questions, which many of the ladies who were up here before answered excellently. I don't need to reiterate what they said because they said it perfectly. But I really, this question number one, how does art help unite people? And also, how can it improve the world? And the statement question, I like that as well. So, Bruce Nauman, he said, the true artist reveals noble truths in the world. I think that's a pretty good statement. But also, if we look at life without art, it's kind of like, it gets really dull really quick. So it's like, without these noble truths, like, what are we doing? We're just like chasing more money and chasing that dopamine hit. Like, we're looking for like these chemical processes in our brain. You can kind of look at it like a B.F. Skinner, the old Harvard professor, you could call him. Once he was like, oh yeah, all your human emotions. He wrote a book called Beyond Freedom and Dignity. So it was about like everything, all your thoughts, everything is all just a chemical process in your brain. And it's like that's what life without art is. It's like, oh yeah, we're all just gonna predictably have a chemical process, like, oh yeah, we're happy now. And it's like, there's something more. There's something like, there's thoughts behind that aren't just chemical processes in our brains. And so that question, where I'm going with this is kind of a two-edged thing where it's like, my art generally is evoking a feeling. It's like, how does it make me feel? And in that way, it's a lot of analogous to music in the sense that the music is making you feel some way. And I talked to my cousin, and who was it? The last woman who spoke. I'm looking at you right now. Had some pretty interesting things to say about art uniting us. She said, it's not getting to the general public. And I talked to my cousin, who's an engineer in North Carolina, and he worked for some like military contract thing or something like that. He was saying, I don't get art, I don't understand. He's like, they made me go to this museum and look at all these nudes, abstract nudes, I didn't get it or whatever. And I said, oh, well, that's all right. It's like, art's like music, if you turn on the radio, you don't like what you hear, you just change a station or put on something else. It's like, it doesn't have to speak to you. It's like, it's all right. Okay, and then, and so you have that word, your art in there, to make a statement. So I've been making these tumbleweed pieces, these tangles, light scribbles for a little while since learning to bend neon. And they kind of have been shifting, they're improvisational. And so I've moved around a lot. I was a ceramicist, and before that I did painting. And when I got to art school at Alfred University, I wandered in as a wide-eyed freshman into the glass studio in the hot shop, and I looked around and there were fire and torches and like loud music and people working in teams all over the place, which totally threw that whole studio solitary thing on its head. So learning to blow glass is pretty amazing because I couldn't make the thing without another person. I had to have multiple people, and especially as things started to get crazy, I had to have a lot of people. So in that one instance, art united us just because we couldn't physically do it without like 10 or 15 people. Like I have to have 15 people with different pieces of glass to stick together and pull this thing. And then going to places like Pilchuck and to craft schools, there was like a celebratory, euphoric excess of artists coming together at a place and leaving behind their lives, which that energy really fueled my work a lot. I don't know if my art's really enlightening, but it certainly lights, to make puns. Anyways, I've spoken enough. If anyone has any questions, we could have art unite people right now, like right after this talk. Come talk to me. I love talking to new people. I don't know most of the people in this room. I'd love to get to know more people. So yeah, ask me some questions. I'll tell you all about how I make things. Neon, glass, whatever, ceramics. Thanks.
Thank you very much, James. And you are the youngest artist, I guess. And today we happen to have very mature, I shouldn't say aged people, but very matured artists who spoke to us, who are going to speak to us. How old are you, can I ask you?
Oh, I'm no, just kidding. 27.
You see, you can see how about this very short experience that you have compared to us, but you learn quickly enough that pick up neon, which was invented by French and at the same time in America, to just about 1 day difference, they announced neon was invented. That was a long time ago. And so you switched to neon from Alfred University studying ceramics. And why was it, you mentioned, but why you pick up the neon? You told me.
That's a good question. So I got into neon because, okay, so I said how I stumbled into the hot shop and I'm like, whoa, what is this place? I fell in love with glass blowing. And then my friend Denzel said, he's like, James, you love glass blowing, clearly. Like, you should try neon. Like, it's more fun than glass blowing. I was like, whatever. Like, that's just, like, neon's just beer science. Like, who would want to learn that? Like, why do I want to learn that? But I trusted Denzel. And so I asked my teacher, Fred, I want to learn neon. And he was also the neon teacher, and he was my intro to glass teacher. He kind of taught, but he inspired me most of all. So he just said to show up Thursdays and Friday mornings, 8 a.m. And I did. I wasn't really eligible for the class at all or anything, but I showed up and they taught me how to bend, and that was cool. And then once they lit up a piece and did this crazy rocket science bombarding process where the air is sucked out and it's hooked up to this huge transformer, then I saw that my art was suddenly illuminated the whole room, and it went all over the walls and everywhere, and I had to have more. I had to have more of that colored, glowing light. So I was really hooked at that point. They would just grab your attention in the same way that a smartphone or anything else would. So I love making art for that like 10-second attention span of today's kids who are on TikTok and all that stuff. They have literally thousands of engineers working to keep their eyes glued to the screens. And so I'm fighting against that to hold their attention and to get them to look. Okay, thanks.
Some time ago, we had a black show. So we put black curtains everywhere. So about 20 artists brought very interesting glass art show. Neon was one of them, but it was strikingly beautiful. It's a kind of not practical neon, put it on the stories, but as a fine art. Interesting view, the new point of view. Thank you, James. Okay, next one is Sabrina. Sabrina has a bird sculpture there. She is a sculptress, and she has also video artist. Interesting thing is she collects all things from the street and then they try a show, I would say, or found object, and then you should see her studio on that video. What a wonderful big studio you have, full of junk, but they're organized. But she dare not to sell this junk. How come? Sad thing that she did not want to sell it to us. We cannot afford it, maybe. Okay, so Sabrina, please talk about your hidden story. Okay.
Thank you, Yuko, and I'm honored to be in the show. It's a really exquisite show, beautiful show. So much good work here. I'm really honored. Thank you again. So, and your questions, which you've all heard numerous times, so I'm not going to say them again, but I thought they were very thought-provoking if you go a little bit past the surface of the questions. So I feel like I can only touch upon these questions. Maybe I can walk around them rather than head face into them, at least from my perspective, which I would say is closer to Mary's perspective on a lot of stuff we spoke earlier, the woman at the end of the table before. And I feel like the performing arts and the public art and video art is more in tune to easily bring like-minded people together in the sense of unifying people. But I think it's very unusual for humans to place themselves voluntarily into environments that don't confirm what they already believe. So, like most of us here, are probably pretty like-minded. So we easily can talk in that realm, but I bet if we went off into certain other subjects, we might not be quite as like-minded on that. So I think the visual arts is, to a lesser degree than the ones I mentioned before, performing arts and everything, because it's very much a solo act. When you go into a museum or you go into a gallery, usually you're going alone. It's introspective, and you're doing that alone. And so because of that, I think there's a little bit less of a unification happening process, I would like to believe that art changes a person's point of view, or a person's opinion, or that art can educate. I obviously believe those things because that's what I do, attempt to do with my work, and I'm not a masochist, so I am trying to do that. And that's why I make art, to try and do those things, and I totally respect all other ideas on why to make art or how to make art. And of course, I'm not really sure whether I really live in the reality that I actually ever changed anybody's mind or gave anybody a new thought or a new way of maybe approaching something, but I'd like to think I do, so that keeps me alive. I've heard before people say to me directly, or that maybe I'm presumptuous to think I have the right, that I have the right to try and communicate to others or educate others about some perspective. But I believe I do. Elizabeth Gilbert is a writer, and she writes about the arrogance of belonging. I'm a firm believer in that. And that's why I do what I do, because I belong to the human race like the rest of us. And that rests my case for me as to why I do what I do. She says the arrogance of belonging is not about egotism or self-absorption. In a strange way, it's exactly the opposite. It's a force that will take you out of yourself. I firmly believe that, and I believe that when I'm working on pieces, it has nothing to do with me, almost. I feel like I'm a vehicle. Hopefully I allow you, and it allows me to engage more with the world. So David White writes, "You will never be able to take any creative risks without the arrogance of belonging. Without it, you will never push yourself out of the suffocating insulation of personal safety and into the frontiers of beautiful and the unexpected." And I love that. And I feel extremely comfortable out on a limb. I feel lucky for that, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay if someone knocks me off the limb too, that's okay too. I can climb back up and get back on. So I do intend with my art to open up a conversation. I mirror what I see around me. I mainly understand, and I'm mainly interested in bringing the attention, things that I see that are challenges to the world. I'm not the one who's going to reflect the beauty of the world. I love the beauty, believe me, it makes me thrive, but I tend to go on the dark side of that. The challenges, I'm going to call it. And I often work with found objects, as Yuko pointed out, in part because I feel like they're a gateway for people, for viewers. They see objects and they instantly can get absorbed into something because we all relate to different objects, and someone will say, "Oh, I had that," or "Oh yeah, I remember that," or "My child had that," and all of a sudden I feel like I can suck them into maybe another dimension, the next dimension of the piece. So I kind of use the found objects as a gateway to bring the unsuspecting viewer into my world. So, and there they can choose to either engage, ponder, consume, or reject what I'm proposing. Though of course I would always prefer that they come away with something more than when they came. So, and I understand, of course, that may not always occur, but I feel blessed and successful when it does occur. I work to achieve openness, vulnerability, information, and honesty, and if I can pass any of that to anyone else, I'm satisfied. I'm happy with the work. One person experiences something different. That's good enough for me. I'm good with that. Specifically to this work, and actually this work too, the performance piece, they're both completely different ways of working for me. I've never done a performance piece before. That's my first one. It won't be my last. I really totally enjoyed the process of that. It's called The Planting, and it's about consumerism. The sound's not on, so you don't get to hear what I have to say, but Hope and Faith, this one that's real easy to see and talk about. I found myself trying to figure out how to cope as an artist during the pandemic, and also previously, before that, when our government elected someone to office that I feel has helped strip away empathy in our country, which to me is impossible to have a civilization without empathy, without caring for others, or at least trying to understand others. So I was in quite a state as to what to create during that time period. And so I got all my scraps of foam that I've been saving. I carve in foam often, a lot of times, that were in my shed. And I thought, I'm not going to have any intention on this piece. I'm just going to let it happen. And this was the first time I ever did this. And I took all my scrap foam, I glued them together without thinking of what they were going to be. And when I was finished gluing them together, I looked and I said, I think that's a bird. So that was a really interesting way for me to approach something, because anybody that knows my work knows that I absolutely go for some kind of intention, some kind of real communication. So I'm skipping around here. Let me see. Okay. So then I just started to try and read what the piece was telling me, reflect back, and started to carve the bird out of the foam. And eventually I had some Tibetan prayer flags that were in my yard that had gotten frayed to the point of no return. And they were, anytime anything happens like that, it goes into my art collection. So the bird is wrapped first in the prayer flags, which for me was really important, because basically what I was reaching out on that piece, I was saying to myself, I need hope and faith. That's why I made that piece. I needed the hope and the faith that something beautiful is going to arise out of all the chaos that we're suffering, have been suffering over the years. It came together, started to come together, and saw the twisted bird and the Tibetan prayer wheels with the undercoat, which I thought was really great energy. And then I was, I have thousands of found objects, and I'm thinking, what do I want to embed on this? And I thought mainly of communication devices, communication tools. So tapestry weaving, which is very much a communication tool, very much a narrative. It's often a narrative when you do tapestries. Measuring tapes is another form of communication. It's just a mathematical thing. And then pens. Most of that is covered with pens that I cut up into little circles and glued onto the piece. So that was it. I was throwing out my own hope and faith into the universe to see what happened. The bird emerged, and I've enjoyed the new process, and I hope you guys did too.
All junk you collected and gathered together to become oneness. Perfect indeed. Thank you very much. And also, you can see on the video, that's her studio. Video shows that she is walking on the street picking up the garbage. And then there's a cart behind her. You don't know who is walking. She's wrapped up all plastic shopping bags. So that is her work. Marvelous. So there's nothing to be wasted in this world. You can give to her when you need to push everything into trash can. Okay, next time, well, Yana expressed she wants to do later.
I ended up in the seat here. I don't know how, so I took it, but feel free to let me go.
Well, let me speak to two gentlemen. Yeah. Okay, next one is Larry Sidichel. And then he is also a member of the Mars Salon for a long time. And he's painting landscape here. He's a traditional landscaper. He's always brings a beautiful big landscape paintings. And then the next one sitting is a new artist. I met him through open call. He responded. He is a very contemporary, younger generation artist, and he's a painter too. The reason why I choose them, two painters, totally different, traditional and then contemporary. You can see his painting is hanging in the small gallery. But let me hear what Larry has to say.
When I looked at these questions, and I started to read them, I thought, well, they actually are all asking the same question. And the question really is there a value to art? First question, how does art unite people? So does art have a value to people, right? Does it enlighten people? Can it bring people together? We'll use the word people. So does art have a value to people, to humanity? And then the third question was, is your art? So does art have value to me, right? Does art have value to an artist? So I'm going to address it in that way. Does art have a value first to people, and does art have value to me? So first of all, art to me, or at least to people, it's a universal language that transcends the differing languages from around the world. It communicates directly to the human heart and mind in each of us. So it doesn't separate us. It unites us in that way. We all can see and we can all appreciate through our eyes. And it's not a foreign language to anyone. And it's unique in the sense in that it unites people both physically and culturally to places and brings us to places like this, the Wa Center, galleries, museums, nonprofit exhibition centers. Folks from all walks of life come together to share an experience, to view art. What unifies us is not necessarily that we agree about the experience that we share, but that we understand the value of sharing the experience at all. It is a lever to bridge diverse communities by inspiring self-reflection and fomenting new ideas to increase understanding. Art unites us in the same way that sharing a meal does. The act of breaking bread, passing dishes, and encouraging your neighbor to try new food. The differences that exist around the table are not only expected, but also what make the discourse. Over the clanking glasses and the scraping of plates. Multifaceted, challenging, and ultimately invaluable. Secondly, does art help enlighten people? And I think it does. It expands our awareness and our consciousness of the world we live in. It reveals an understanding and appreciation for things that we might not have known, that might have been subconscious, unseen, or overlooked before we first experienced them from looking at art. And I always think of, for me, since I'm a painter, of painters. And I guess the easy example would be Monet, right? So when we look at water and light dappling on water, why do we appreciate that? Because Monet pointed it out to us. A foggy landscape, a Turner. All of these artists added to our ability to experience the world in different ways, something that we might have overlooked before we experienced them first in art. And the last question is, how can it improve the world and unite people? And I think art gives us all courage and inspires positive change that grows the better nature in our human hearts and minds. And in contemporary art, I believe the boundaries traditionally separating all these mediums are collapsing. And greater integration of technology will foster more multimedia immersive works and a commitment to mandate art as a tool for public education through increased exposure to visual thinking programs and regular access to art institutions. That will ensure the next generation of people learns how to interpret rather than describe, as well as listen and respond to different perspectives. So it serves a very valuable purpose. And I think a lot of the artists up here, well, Mary and others were saying, you know, we're artists, people don't understand. It doesn't matter whether they understand us. It's what our artwork does for them that they may not even realize. It becomes part of their world, whether they recognize it or not. And so that is something that everyone can appreciate. And I think as an artist, we can appreciate doing that, whether we get recognition or not. And finally, what does art mean to me? Or is my art intended to make a statement? And yes, it is. It's an aesthetic one that I hope enriches the viewer's experience and awareness of life. A visual rapture that engages both emotions and intellect. Something that also resonates in the viewer and makes them understand that we're not all alone, but all share in these common yet extraordinary and sometimes sublime experience. For me, I'm a landscape painter. I work in oil. It's called traditional. I also teach, and some of my students, when they take painting classes, they'll say, I don't want to work with paint. I want to work with some other material. And I say, well, paint is an other material. It's not reality. And when I look at this show, paint is basically color. And color is in the cloth, it's in the weaving, it's in the diodes of the electronic screen over there, it's in the glass. And so it's present everywhere. And for me, the idea of working directly with the color, it seems that that's what paint does for me. That's why I like paint. The surface of the canvas is just a platform to place that color on. And so in terms of my art, specifically, it tries to capture the atmosphere of a place and the memory of a feeling and about a connection with people's emotions. It's personal and at the same time timeless and universal. We all carry with us memories of the places that we love and the people who made those places feel like home or like an adventure. I'm an expressive landscape painter, mostly working plein air, and I'm always infusing my work with my own memories. Art is a personal experience to me. In the case of my painting in this exhibit, it's about my relationship with the light and color in New England, especially Cape Cod. And I'm compelled to express that relationship through the medium of mark making and color. So this particular area that I painted is a panel, and it's a tidal where water comes in and comes out. So every 5 minutes, it's a different picture. It's a different painting. And I could stand in that location. I could paint 25 paintings a day because sometimes it's pure mud. Sometimes it's full of water. The wind, the light, the direction of the light, it all changes those things. But to me, what it does, it brings out different colors. And so it's a wonderful reservoir for me to find them. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, he goes in front of the nature, goes into the nature, and then examines, and then look at, just like Monet expressed different colors, the same tones and so on. So you can see so many different colors on the mud, sometimes water, and you pick up with, as you said, you are a colorist, you paint with color that attract you. Okay, so did you hear? Were you able to listen? Yeah, okay. All right, next one is another artist, and his name is Scott Allen Roberts. His painting is in the other room. One painting was sold, so we replaced another one, and which is very contemporary looking, very hot pink color. You can see that in that room, and he has something to say. Okay.
All right, guys. Thank you again for having me. And so I'm an LA native, so apologies in advance. I have been out in New York over a decade. I got my degree at University of Southern California. I also went to Parsons for my postgraduate. I have a studio upstate in Hudson Valley, and so I've been pretty much out there in a very Henry David Thoreau sort of manner to get away from illusion and get myself into a forest and connect with Mother Earth, which I think is what a lot of you and I connected onto. My pieces are actually really big, and I had sent in several large pieces, and Yuko was like, whoa, we need smaller. She's like, things are 6, 8, 9 feet long and 6 feet tall, so I was like, okay, let's see what we can do. So the Hudson Valley is just a backdrop for my studio, but also the backdrop for my inspiration. So it's where I'm getting a lot of the florals, a lot of landscape, a lot of, it's a collisional sort of style. So I am implementing a little bit of painterly styles, things that are more traditional, but I'm overlaying it with artifacts and florals that are hyper graphic, using really, really vibrant color. A lot of my theme work stems from my past existentialism, mortality, ontology, it's dark territory, but I'm trying to explore it in this sort of bright, inviting, compelling way. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. I think, we've answered so many of these questions really, really well, so I might only just touch on one or two of them at this point. I do think that art has the capacity to unite. And I think that a couple of us have said it already. It's a different language. It's not written, it's not spoken. And my quick little anecdote for that is that I went to go see an exhibit in Mexico City, and it was Rodin. And it was a woman carved out of stone, and there was drapery over her face. And there was two elderly ladies from Mexico City there looking at it, gasping, and I was there gasping. And we were both looking at this one piece, and that was unification right there. We were both feeling something. It wasn't spoken to us. It was visual, and it was compelling. So I do think that there's a way for art to unite people in that way. I also think that artists, they want to create a stitch in the hem of eternity. We only get this one little moment to create something, and eternity is obviously huge. If we're able to make that little impact, that, I think, just me looking at that Rodin sculpture, that was a huge little stitch there, that united, even just for a brief second, two strangers and myself. So I think art has the capacity to do that at a bigger level. The question, how does art help enlighten people, is a huge question, right? I think first you have to kind of decide what is enlightenment. And I think, for me, it's just awareness. And so, in particular with Mother Nature, I think we've become less and less aware, especially with reality versus virtuality. And we're living in this thing all the time, and we're becoming kind of lost in an illusion. And it's sad to think that, if you're just aware of your breath, if you just go outside and watch the sunrise one day, if you wake up that early and enjoy it, it's rejuvenating. It actually helps your life. It actually makes you feel better. If you just step away from this for a little bit, so I've got that stupid counter on here now. Oh, you 25% more screen time. So I think, that's what I aim to do a little bit in my work. I don't have figures in my work, even though I have a huge background doing figurative work. I want my viewer to be the figure. And I want to put you in a contemplative space. And I want you to ask yourself those questions, and I want you to think about it. And so the work that I have here today is part of a series that stemmed out of the pandemic. We're all filters, whether we like it or not. Pandemics, socioeconomics, politics, we're all going to be filtering that in our work. And this particular work I called Spectre at the Banquet, and it's about this giant banquet table, several smaller pieces, and every piece is an artifact charged with meaning. And it's just really going into this reality versus virtuality concept. And I think that just as long as my work has the capacity to make you aware, then I've done my job in terms of my statement. So again, I'll leave it there. Thank you again so much, everyone, for being here. And I'm Scott.
Yeah, thank you very much, Scott Allen Roberts. Okay, so he was from California, and I mentioned to him those artists who used to paint in Manhattan or in Brooklyn or New York City moved to New Mexico or California. So when I look at their paintings, their colors have changed drastically. Like Hawaiian, they tend to use bright colors on their work. And New Yorkers, they wear black and white clothes, usually. Not necessary, but when you go to New Mexico or South, they are wearing bright, clothes. Depending upon blue skies and so on, environment changes. So I thought he was from New Mexico or somewhere, but he was from California. So interestingly enough, you always put wine glass too on your painting. That is inseparable. Do you drink a lot? One.
Oh, I think that I was looking back at like just sort of still life in general. I mean, we were all kind of trapped inside in 2020 a lot. So I was just, instead of being outside that much, you know, in nature, I kept being like sort of inside everywhere I went. So I just kept seeing lots of, maybe yeah, in 2020 there was a lot more wine glasses around. Yeah, maybe.
It's nice to have wine. Wine is fine. Rice is nice. Beer is beer. Whiskey is whiskey. What else? Sake is so for the sake of good life. Rice is nice. Okay, everybody. Thank you very much. This is concluding, but except one very beautiful lady who naked on the top, and she's showing the skirt. How about this piece? Yana Schnitzler, she was a creator and special project. Yana, please explain to us.
Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you so much, Yuko, for having me part of this incredible show. It's really an honor, and I'm really thrilled to be part of it. And I feel like all my, foregoers have told about what art is, the enlightenment of art, the power of art so brilliantly that I feel like maybe I'm just gonna leave it at that and talk a little bit more about the project that brought me here. So I had started working on this project about 1.5 years ago. And then the shutdown came, and at some point I was talking to Yuko on the phone, and I was telling her about this project that I'd been working on, and she said that's really amazing because I'm thinking of putting up a show of Togetherness and Oneness, and it just kind of was the perfect match for that. And I think that was, of course, no coincidence, because with all that we have been through over the past little bit more than a year, I feel like, maybe I was just a channel for this project to come forth. So I put out a call to ask women what they wanted to let go of. And I asked them to write it down on a piece of fabric and mail it to me. And so they did. And I had in mind that I wanted to create a skirt of it. And eventually I'm going to do a dance performance with it where I will be symbolically gathering this large skirt around me. And then it will be publicly destroyed as a symbol of letting go. So the idea really is that it is a ritualistic art project that brings women from all over the world together in their, in what they wish to let go of, what they feel like is time to let go of in their life. And it's incredible. It's really incredible because I have had the most amazing feedback so far from people who said it's already happening, and put it out on this piece of fabric and sent it to you. And and I guess it was like that declaration or the statement that they made for themselves. And which of course made me tremendously happy to hear that, because I had no idea when I started this project what I was setting out to sort of become the channel for it, but the skirt is still growing, so I'm still receiving pieces which will integrate after the show is over into the skirt. And to me it really is, as I said, I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but I feel like it's such an incredible statement for how we are interconnected, how we are facing similar issues, and how it really is kind of like a visceral experience to look at these pieces if you're willing to be open to look at it in that sort of like state of mind. So I created the skirt not shut off of the public. I had a gallery run at Shashama earlier this year, and during 7 weeks I first had put up all these pieces up on the walls, and I also had a sandwich board out on the street so that women would still be able to participate. So it said, like, as a woman, what do you wish to let go of? And I had hung some fabric pieces on it, and women were really responding. I mean, really, it's incredible. Women of all walks of life came in, and some of them, they didn't even come in, they just wrote it down out there and disappeared. But it's been really a truly amazing experience. I mean, like, these 7 weeks was a time of, and it was like, it started in late February, went into April, so it was just a time when the city slowly started opening, and I could just feel this tremendous urge, this hunger from the street to share, either not necessarily to make a piece, but just to share part of their story, to chat and to connect, really, after this time of isolation, this tremendous hunger for connection and for exchange. So I really feel that art can have a tremendous impact on connecting us to ourselves and learning about ourselves, and through that, developing empathy, as you said earlier, developing more empathy for each other also. So and that for me has been really the most incredible experience, and really the major takeaway, that it has been such a profound experience of connecting to each other. And it was not just men who came in, like women who came in, men, even though sometimes they were a bit intimidated and were not sure if they were allowed in there, something that not much happens, right? So, but of course, they were welcome to come in to kind of participate in a dialogue. So, and what it has created so far, it's really an incredible experience. Also for me, as the person who is sort of like the medium or the channel for that. So, thank you.
I would like to mention to everybody, Jana is from Germany, and she bridges all women from how many countries? 47 countries, women. She bridge concept I emphasize at the World Center's concept. So she bridges so many women in the world. What would you like to get rid of? Women have been suffering a lot, and things are changing too. We want to get rid of some burden. We want to say whatever we want to express. Those are the subject matters women has been started pursuing too. So that doesn't mean that we exclude men. Men are just as important women to make two together as oneness. So she was very honored to receive national endowment for the art for this project. And when she was stitching in the city, Bomb magazine came, and then it was exposed into an article, and some others, Italian reporters, also wrote about her project. So if you let it happen, something in the city or anywhere, people are very much interested in paying attention to what's going on. That's what she did. She didn't know how she envisioned it, but she didn't know how people could accept, right?
And actually I was really surprised, because I figured I would be sitting in a space and just like doing my thing and nobody would even kind of pay attention. But it was really incredible I mean, there were really days where I didn't do a single stitch, where I didn't have any chance to do any work because people were just coming in and out. It was just really amazing. It was really incredible. This like tremendous desire and the need to share and to connect. And really the beauty is that all women, as it is before, women of all walks of life. I mean, like there are shelters around, and even from the shelters, women came and participated, and it was just really a truly unifying experience. And also I was really thrilled as the city just bit by bit started opening a little bit, like in the spring, because it makes a difference. If you have like empty storefronts, or if you have art in a storefront, all of a sudden there is a sign of life, there is something being created, and if you want, you can be part of it. You don't have to, but it signals something like positivity, hope, looking forward, moving on. So that really was also a really rewarding experience to be part of that like revitalization of the city, which was amazing.
And so the rest of those pieces hanging in this room are done by artists, but this piece is, she herself is, Jana is a dancer, beautiful dancer. She's the director of dance curator of the Bar Center. So that's how I got to know her. But she is the one who created, she is an artist who created by gathering all women's fabrics, making statement, what would you like to let it go of? It's a beautiful concept, isn't it? And this is also another different art form. And thank you very much to the creative artist, not only dancer. Okay, thank you very much. 5:15 for your kind patience. I hope you enjoyed. Very meaningful. Thank you. This installation will happen, and for those who came to pick up. Thank you, AJ, and he's a sound engineer.